This question is discussing psychological coping mechanisms. So let's look at the question. It's stating that a patient frequently redirects negative feelings. So they redirect their negative feelings from a source that causes discomfort to a more acceptable or less threatening source. This is an example of which defense mechanism. So let's take a look at the choices. Option A says repression. If someone's repressing as their defense mechanism, repressing an emotion, or let's say repressing an event, that means that they are refusing to think about it, to accept it. They just want to not think about it at all. Just put that thought away and move on. So maybe, for example, maybe they witnessed a terrible car accident, or maybe they experienced a traumatic event while they're growing up, and it's just so upsetting to them that they just never want to think about it, and anytime it's brought up, they just put it out of their mind and they try and move on and go about their day without thinking about that thought. And this is considered a defense mechanism because they're defending themselves from these terrible feelings by refusing to think about the event. Now, although this is a type of defense mechanism, repression sounds different than the example in the question because the question is stating that they're redirecting negative emotions, they're moving it from a source that causes discomfort to a more acceptable area, and that sounds like a lot of different steps that the person is doing in this example. But in option A, all they're doing is they're deciding they don't want to think about it, and so we could eliminate choice A. Let's take a look at choice B. So choice B says projection. Now, how you can remember what projection is discussing is think of something similar to the word projection. Think of a projector. So let's say you have a projector here. Think about when you go to the movie theaters, the cinema. So you have your projector, and what does it do? It flashes the movie onto a big screen. It's going from the projector onto the big screen. Now, what do movies and projectors have to do with psychology? Well, it's actually quite similar. Let's say that we have two people here, okay? And let's say that they are in a relationship with one another. Now, we are going to look at how this person over here is going to project their emotions, what they see in themselves, onto somebody else. And usually projection is referring to something that they don't like, something negative. So let's say that this person over here is cheating on their partner. So they have this emotion here that they're cheating, they're guilty because they know they're not being faithful to their partner or to their relationship. And they feel so upset about this that they decide that they are going to project these feelings onto their partner. They're going to start accusing their partner of cheating on them, even though they are the ones who are doing the cheating themselves. And they will start telling this person, I think you're cheating. I don't think you're being loyal to me. I think that you're going off and hanging out with somebody else instead of me. When in reality, the person making those accusations is the one who is doing the cheating. So they are projecting this negative feeling, this guilt, all of the bad things that they're doing onto their partner when they're doing it instead. They are projecting it. So this is an example of projection. Back to the question, does it sound like that whole concept of projecting their emotions and their negative qualities onto somebody else, does that sound the same as redirecting negative feelings from a source that causes discomfort to a more acceptable or less threatening source? Well, it does sound like they are redirecting negative feelings. They are putting it on to somebody else, but it's stating that it's coming from them to a more acceptable or less threatening source. So are we thinking in this example that they're seeing their partner as less threatening than they are themselves? I'm not sure so much if in that example it seems that way. I'm thinking that there might be a better choice here, but let's leave option B open for now, and let's take a look at the other options and come back to it. So now let's look at option C, displacement. So in the example of displacement, let's say that this person had a really tough day at work today, and they got yelled at by their boss, and they're very upset. But they see their boss, let's say the boss is over here, as a high threat. They see this person as someone very threatening, they have a power over them, their superiority, and so this person over here, the employee, doesn't feel that they could fight back to their boss. They feel like that's a threat. That's not someone that they could put their anger onto. So now this person, they come home from work and they have a family member who's sitting at home here. They're not a threat. They're just someone that they're comfortable with. They've lived with them their whole life. And now the person who got yelled at work, they just come home, they're so upset, and they just start screaming and yelling, and all the anger that they could not put onto their boss because this person was such a high threat, they put it onto the person they're living with at home. Even though this person over here has nothing to do with everything that occurred to their family member at work, it's not their fault, they're taking the brunt of it. They're the ones getting yelled at because they're seen as not a threat, and that it's okay. There's not going to be as much of a repercussion yelling at the family member as opposed to yelling at the boss, who can have repercussions for the actions of the employee who decides to yell back. In option C to option B, displacement is different than projection because we are discussing someone who is a threat. We're discussing moving this discomfort to a less threatening source, to the family member over here, as opposed to the threatening boss over here. So it sounds like displacement is matching the example in the question better than projection. We could take away projection as an open choice here. We could eliminate that. And we're going to go with displacement as our answer. But let's look at option D just to be certain. Option D is discussing denial. And denial is a coping mechanism that we will commonly see in grief, and it's often seen as the first stage of grief. And this occurs when a person refuses to believe something as being true or something as being as fact, even though in most cases it is something that's true and it is a fact. So an example of this might be someone learns that somebody in their life has died, has passed away, and the person who is learning that is so grief-stricken that they refuse to believe it. They might say phrases such as, "No, that can't be true. You're lying to me. Stop saying that happened because it did not happen, even though it has." So if a person is saying those things, then they are experiencing denial. And in this example up here, it's stating that a person is redirecting negative feelings. They're talking about threatening sources. Those aren't classic descriptions of denial, so we could eliminate that. And now it's looking like that's true. Displacement, choice C, is describing the example in this question of moving feelings from a negative source to a less threatening source.